A very, very good afternoon or a good morning to all of you joining us for today's Africam show. My name is Ben Coley. I'm with you for the next 45 minutes, and we will go and visit a variety of cameras and see some beautiful sights like this. What a wonderful start to have some giraffe drinking at Oldonyo up in Kenya, and look at that for a backdrop as well. Absolutely beautiful. But do send in your questions and comments. We always love to hear from you what you're doing, what you're having to drink, what your breakfast is or dinner. It's always nice to hear from you. And I see we've got a couple of comments coming in already. Amber CO, you're waving hello to everybody and thanking the team that brings us the show. I couldn't agree with you more. It's a wonderful opportunity to connect with you and to catch up with all the goings on the cameras. It looks like, so we're off to a good start with these beautiful giraffe. And a good morning to you, W. Bouchard from Toronto. Well, I'm trying to work out what the time difference would be for you, but quite a lot, I would think. But I hope you have a wonderful day ahead, and I hope that today's Africam show will assist with that. Who else do we have? Casper's Third Ghost. There's a name I recognize as well. Happy Tuesday to you from Milwaukee. You've got a hot coffee ready for the show. Well, I'm afraid I only have water today, but it is middle of the afternoon here. And I have to say, I'm not in my normal place. I'm in an office at a lodge in the Timbavati at the moment because I'm out in the wilds. I'm sat in a small room with no aircon, and it's about 35 degrees Celsius outside. So I am hydrating, but you'd enjoy your coffee. Casper's Third Ghost. DNC, you've also got your hot coffee. Excellent. And you've made it just in time. Well, I'm very, very happy to hear that. Namaste to Zygote as well. And hello to Jan Powers. Great that everybody could join us. But how lovely to see these giraffe. Always amazing to watch giraffe having a drink. The gymnastics, the yoga that they have to go through, the incredible stresses and strains on those long, bendy limbs to enable them to get down to water. It's always baffled me why nature would come up with such a design to make it so difficult to drink. But as I'm sure many of you are aware, giraffe are quite capable of going relatively long periods without water, particularly with their exceptionally efficient digestive system. They can go a few days without water if needs be, and perhaps even longer if they've got access to nice, moist vegetation that they will be taking advantage of. It's always one of the fun games when I was involved in guide training, and we would occasionally, have people with zero knowledge and zero bush experience, which is absolutely fine. Well, I used to see them as a blank canvas, and so we can teach them all sorts, and trying to get people to guess what droppings that the animal, what droppings were the. Wow, I can't speak properly. What animal were the droppings from? That's what I'm trying to say. And certainly a lot of people are surprised just how small giraffe droppings are because they have such efficient guts. But here we go. Go for the leg spread. Let's say the huge. Oh no, it wasn't quite the right situation. You always have to be a bit careful in the soft mud there. You wouldn't want to slip in that situation. But I guess the benefits of having a long neck and being able to reach vegetation, and particularly from a sexual selection perspective from the males, it is worth it. Who else do we have? Jean Gale saying, "Good morning from Seattle. You have coffee and cinnamon toast." Well, that's a nice twist to the coffees thus far. That sounds very, very nice. W. Beauchard, you said it's 10 a.m. over in Toronto. Okay, so I assume you've been up for at least an hour there or thereabouts. But as we said, a lovely, lovely way to start the day with a couple of giraffe cows. And I'm really enjoying this backdrop to see, it certainly looks on my screen at least, some snow-capped mountains hiding behind those low clouds. Very, very picturesque indeed. But remarkable things, these giraffe, and certainly one of my, and I think most people's favorite things to see on safari. They're normally right up to the top of everybody's list. They are just so unique and so unusual. These, of course, if you're unaware, are Maasai giraffe as opposed to the Southern African giraffe, which maybe we'll see on one of our other cameras at some point. But notice how closely knit that pattern is and how sort of spiky it is. It's not nice and geometric patterns, which you tend to find on the Southern African giraffe. It's a little bit more jaggedy, but really rather pretty. It's a bit like crazy paving, but very, very important for thermoregulation as well. If you've ever seen those documentaries where they have an infrared camera on the giraffe after dark, you can see the different shades, the whites and the blacks, showing which areas are hotter, and those darker spots just radiate the heat away from the body. And Marcia, that's very nice of you to say that you always enjoy me being on the show and sharing knowledge and experience. Well, I hope so. Yeah, I like to see. I say I've spent a lot of time with giraffe, and having worked for a very interesting year in a place called Katavi National Park in the southwestern corner of Tanzania, right in the deepest, darkest wilds of Africa. That one. I got to spend quite a lot of time with Maasai giraffe. In fact, particularly in that area, there were hundreds of them. I remember trying to count all the Maasai giraffe on one game drive we did, and we decided that we'd got bored of that game after we breached three figures. We got over 100 giraffe and decided that there were a lot. That was the conclusion that we drew. This male coming. Oh, look, there's that little mongoose face that just popped into the foreground. We've moved now, but that's right. But we'll take this beautiful close up. Look at the way those hooves on the front right foot or the left-hand foot as we're looking at it are splayed, looking for grip in the mud. Something with tracks that often confuses people if it has been muddy. And you get that very much cloven hoof, or from what are, of course, just modified toenails from what we call an ungulate, or an even-toed ungulate in this case, having two toes and the rest of the toes have disappeared as an evolutionary response to make the legs longer to be able to run faster to avoid predators. Different foot structures amongst mammals. The unguligrade for the ungulates, the odd and even-toed ungulates. There are only two main genuses of odd-toed ungulates that I'm aware of, at least, which would be the zebra or anything that has a hoof, a single hoof, and of course the rhinoceros, which has three toes. And then you have the digitigrade and the plantigrade. So this little dwarf mongoose would have a digitigrade foot structure where it kind of walks on its, I suppose you could say, the first two joints of the finger if you look at yours, and the rest of it is raised and the thumb is slightly higher up in what we would call a dew claw. But he's found himself a wonderful little spot there, little hidey hole, coming out also watching the giraffe. See those very sharp claws designed for digging up little grubs and beetles and larvae and anything else that they can find. Always just looks so hyper alert. I always say they remind me of gummy bears. He looks as if he's got a little bit of cobweb stuck on his fur and around his nose, possibly a spider also living in that log. Andy, you're asking about this black serval. Yes, I believe that there has been one spotted in Oldonyo. Andy, to be honest, servals and caracals, I kind of put them in the same bracket when we're looking for, unusual nocturnal animals and predators out here. The smaller cats, I see them very, very rarely. In fact, I was chatting to somebody the other day saying how nice it would be to see either of those two, serval or caracal, because caracal is my favorite of all my favorite things. I just think caracals are so beautiful with those tufty ears and that sort of very burnt orange colored fur. But a serval, for anybody who doesn't know what a serval looks like, it kind of looks like a miniature cheetah, basically. It's like a baby cheetah. And they have spots and these rather stunted tails as well, but really, really beautiful, streamlined little cats that generally predate on little rodents and they bounce on them. But I haven't seen a serval for many, many years now, I have to say. But we've jetted all the way from Kenya down to the Eastern Cape to Mantis Founders Lodge for a white rhino and a tiny little calf. This is so special to see. Margaret and her calf, I have just been informed. I have seen it before, but I wasn't aware that Margaret was here and that Margaret has a little one. And I believe that it is only about 3 weeks old. Like kind of giant warthogs, don't they? Absolutely gorgeous. I'd say one of my favorite memories from when I was guiding. I remember one day we were headed back to the lodge, and where I was working, we only had one lion pride, and we'd seen the lions that morning, and all the individuals were accounted for. And on the way back, we saw quite a few vultures sitting in the tree. So I left the guests in the car, walked in with my tracker to go and see what we could find, thinking maybe there was a leopard kill or something there, or the hyenas had taken something, or maybe we had some new lions that had come in. But we couldn't find much, but we found the remnants of something. Look at them trotting. We could see that there was some form of internal stuff. Let's just put it at that. We were trying to figure out what this was, and then we noticed that there were rhino tracks, and we found the tiniest little rhino tracks that were smaller, well, probably no much bigger than the palm of. Oh, careful, buddy. Engage diff. There we go. Not much bigger than the palm of my hand, and we realized that we had stumbled across where a white rhino had given birth, and we'd actually found the afterbirth. That's what the vultures and a hyena was going well, were investigating. And a few days later, we bumped into that rhino and actually saw the calf. So I was the first person to see that rhino calf. And that was such a special moment to know that I was the first human eyes, to witness that little one. That was absolutely glorious. Thank you, Margaret, and congratulations on your little one. I think we're going to go to Hwangi next, where we have got some baboons. Another tiny one. Mum just took that one away, obviously being taught some bad habits by the youngster. Always fun to watch the baboons. Very relatable animals. I love how the youngsters often stick together and cause a little bit of trouble. You can normally hear them in the evenings getting disciplined, and they don't want to go to bed. And there's a variety of screams and commotions coming from the big tall trees, often in riverine areas, the jackalberries, the fig trees that they will often roost in during the evening. I'm reminiscing on that rhino sighting. That was so special to see one that I'm trying to think. Did we see it the following day or the next day? But either way, it was yeah, maybe a sort of a 48-hour old rhino that I got to see. I have no idea what happened to that youngster. I hope it went on and is continuing to leave a happy, healthy, and prosperous and safe life. April Owl, you're also loving the baby rhino and saying, yes, no horn yet. Takes a little bit of time before it starts to show. You can kind of see that well, I'm not sure what the official term for it is, but the base plate of it, if you will, is very much there. But yeah, not really any sign of any protrusion yet. Such a shame that chances are that it will have to have its horn cut off after a few years. But I say, unfortunately, in the current climate, it is the safest option that we know of at the moment. Sure what disturbed the baboons just now in the tree. These youngsters seem relatively unperturbed. Oh, a very small one. Mum keeping a careful eye. I love their pink ears. Their ears are far too big for their body, and they seem to be almost fluorescent pink at times. I think the grip strength and the power that they've got. I'm very sorry for this noise next to me, everybody. Something is beeping at me. Okay, I think I have stopped the beeping. I'm not sure what it was. I turned off a button. I hope it wasn't the Wi-Fi. If I disappear, that might be why. So excuse me. I'm in alien surroundings today. MG leopard spots. You like seeing baboons eating sausage fruits? Yes, those are amazing. If no one knows or has seen a sausage fruit, go and have a look at them. They are pretty incredible things. Long, they're kind of like loafers. If you think about the size of a loafer that you might wash your back with in the shower. And in fact, they have been used for that purpose. They're dried out and used for that. But they're not really edible to humans, but they can get very large and weigh a couple of kilograms. Always a good idea to not sleep under a sausage tree, nor park your car under a sausage tree, I might also suggest. Also favored by hippos, strangely. It's not unusual to see a hippo chomping down on a sausage fruit, but used by people for skin conditions. It supposedly has a very good moisturizing extract that is taken out and used in chaos being caused by this big male, that is used in various products and things. You see how the protective mum grabbed the baby there and ducked for cover. But definitely a good sized troop, this. Because these troops can get massive 50, 60, 70 members, maybe even more sometimes. To hear such an array of vocalizations coming from them as well. Yaktaboer, they do indeed like to groom. It's important for social bonding, social contact. Not only is it one of the reasons that helps them keep them relatively clean and disease-free and therefore have a greater chance of not falling foul to something and being able to bridge and reproduce and do all the things that baboons are supposed to do, but more importantly, sounds like a hippo. More importantly, of course, it just builds those social bonds between members of the troop. And there is a hippo masquerading as a rock in the middle of the dam. Whether that was the one that was vocalizing just now, I am not sure. Ah, I believe the resident hippo here is called Moto Moto, which I am guessing is related to the Madagascar movies. Who is Moto Moto is so chunky, I seem to recall. I have to say, an all-time classic, Madagascar. Although I'd say the other day I watched Finding Dory for the first time. I was a big fan of Finding Nemo, and I finally got round to watching Finding Dory. It was most enjoyable. It made me laugh on a few occasions, and I was just blown away by how amazing the animation is, even though that's a few years old now, to get all the intricacies of the different colors and the shimmerings of the water and the light refracting through the water. It is incredible what we can do this day and age. Okay, but that was lovely to check in with this group of baboons. I think let's head up to Elephant Pan in Botswana, the old hyena pan, and check out some elephants. Beautiful. Still nice to see that there's lots and lots of water in this pan. I remember 6 months ago there was very little. Just watching this one, is it fishing something out of the water there and feeding on it, or is it drinking? Because I've noticed here at this waterhole a few times, now that looks like a drink, that there are, or there were quite a few elephants that were pulling something out. Well, not pulling something out, it wasn't grass or vegetation, picking something up under the surface, little round things, and tossing them into their mouth a bit like popcorn. And I decided maybe there were things like marula seeds or something that had been washed down during the flooding and the rain that had caused this waterhole to swell to the proportion that it is now. But something I've never noticed anywhere else before, but I've seen it multiple times here at Elephant Pan, or possibly the water has covered something that would otherwise be growing in that area. It always seems to be at that back part of the dam. So I go, you liked Finding Nemo. I don't. Who didn't like Finding Nemo? It's such a lovely story and it's so well done and it's so endearing. I haven't watched one of those sort of animated movies for a while. I still haven't got around to watching the remastered Lion King. I was a huge fan of the first one, even as upsetting as it was in places. And for some reason, I haven't brought my or been able to bring myself to watch the remastered one, and for fear of detracting from my enjoyment of the original. I think I've got it somewhere. Maybe I should make that my next movie watch. I see Kirsten saying, don't watch it. Yeah, maybe I shouldn't. It doesn't feel quite right. I think if it's going to be that realistic, I'd rather see the real thing. And I'm in a very, very fortunate position to have a chance to witness those things firsthand. In fact, earlier today, we popped down to the dam because there was all sorts of commotion just before lunch. We saw a whole bunch of vultures, we saw some hyenas, and then a herd of elephants came through, and there was trumpeting and things running around. So we wondered what had happened. So we jumped in the vehicle, drove around sort of behind the dam wall, and found some still wet blood from something which had been attacked. And we were sort of doing our CSI thing to try and figure out what had happened. Um, And just some people had seen some kudu come down to the dam slightly before, and they had a young calf with them. And it seems, from what best we could see, that the hyenas had actually taken out this young kudu. We couldn't find any carcass, but it was probably an hour afterwards by the time we got there. So we assume it had been completely finished by those hyenas. See, this elephant's picking something up, resting it in the crook of his trunk, and then popping it in his mouth. I don't know if anybody knows what is going on here, but I've noticed this behavior at Elephant Pan over the last few months, or since there's been water there. But yeah, it was very interesting. We were trying to figure out because there were lions seen in the area. Was it the lions? Did the elephants chase the lions away? When we found the elephants, we found they had a very, very young calf, probably not much more than a month, which would probably explain why they were so boisterous in chasing away the hyenas. But it was interesting to see there were little, sorry for anybody who was sensitive or eating, but there were sort of pools of blood that were still wet, dotted around all over the place. And if it had been lions, you would have expected it all to be concentrated in one spot. Jumped on the back of a poor unsuspecting kudu and gripped around the throat. And that would have been curtains. But of course, hyenas are a little bit more um, messy when it comes to eating. And we think, yes, this poor animal was probably taken out and was being dragged around by the hyenas or maybe staggered around a little bit, leaving pools of blood everywhere. But we found absolutely no sign of the unfortunate animal. But amazing to go and be able to sort of see and hear something and go and investigate it. Okay, that looks more like a sort of a reed or something that is pulled out there. I think going for reeds at the moment. A nice change from the Mopani, of course, which is the predominant vegetation in this area. You can see it all behind the elephants there, just walls of Mopani. Very easy to get lost in there. Yes, this little baby elephant we saw earlier today was still very young, still very fluffy in appearance. I wouldn't have said more than a few weeks old. Maybe we should introduce that young elephant to Margaret's young rhino and they could grow up to be friends. Just wonderful to watch animals doing what animals do. The trunk looks like an umbrella handle, so just holding it just high enough to avoid dragging it along the ground. Yeah, this Mapani felt it's incredibly deceptive. You could see 50 elephants come down and have a drink here, and then they turn around and they take 15 paces. And if you just happen to glance at that point, you would see nothing. Things just disappear into Mapani thickets. You have to be very careful whilst walking through Mapani thickets. Very easy to stumble upon things. Your best or our best weapon, if that's the right word, I don't like that word, but our best defense or our most important sense whilst on foot, particularly in that area, is our hearing and our smell, because your eyesight is very much compromised by the thickness of the vegetation. Listening for things moving, very, very important. You might just hear an elephant depositing something out of the back end, just bumping onto the ground, uh, rustling of vegetation, vocalizations between individuals. So what you don't want to do is find yourself walking through and find yourself in the middle of a herd unexpectedly. That is not a good place to be. MG leopard spots. You said that whilst you were on safari, you spent a day with the Bushman tribe, and they have baboon skulls everywhere, and saying that baboons are one of their favorite foods. Well, that's interesting. I personally have never sampled baboon, um, but I know it is certainly eaten locally. But what an amazing experience that would have been to stay with the Bushmen or to experience Bushmen. I hope you managed to do some tracking and hear some of their amazing cultural stories. So some of the oldest cultures that we have sort of records on, dating back tens of thousands of years potentially. Very, very special. I was fortunate enough to spend a little bit of time with a couple of Bushman trackers who came to the lodge where I was working a long time ago now. And we tracked Rhino with them. And yes, it was quite a spiritual experience. And we actually had some bush paintings on that reserve. And we were able to take them to the Bushman paintings. And they were communicating in their traditional dialect of the clicks. So we had no knowledge of what they were saying, but we had a translator with us as well. In fairness, they were very open and honest. They said they couldn't really figure out what was being said or what had been recorded on these rocks, but it was very, very special to be in the presence of the ancestors of the people who had made those traditional paintings on the rock face. Okay, well, I was so busy chatting that I'm sure you all figured out that we went back to the hide at Hwangi, see the baboons and Moto Moto, and now we've gone back up to Old Onya in Kenya with this beautiful elephant bull monopolizing the dam, quenching his thirst. And I'm very partial to those Bushman stories, particularly with my line of work and my interest in the ancient astronomy of cultures. There's quite a few stories that I tell here that I've picked up from Bushman star lore about the Southern Cross, about the Speaker, the brightest star in Virgo, about the Pleiades star cluster, the Seven Sisters, the origins of the Milky Way. There are some beautiful stories dating back so many, many thousands of years from the Bushmen. But strangely, I've only ever found one reference of an elephant in the night sky. If anybody knows the Great Square of Pegasus, apparently some of the Tswana tribes up in Botswana, or that culture at least, sometimes that area of sky was associated with an elephant. And I also recently discovered that the ideas that the Milky Way itself was the ghostly impression of an elephant that had gone up into the sky. MG leopard spots, you say it was an outstanding experience. I have no doubt it was, and I actually encourage all of you, if you ever get to go to visit an area where you can spend some time with the traditional Bushmen, do so. It is a really eye-opening and say a spiritual experience. Something attracted his attention. I wonder if there was a larger elephant approaching from the left. You got something attracted his attention, and then he's decided that for whatever reason, whether it was related to that bit of body language or not, that the time has come to move on. With little booties on, with its dark stained skin just up to his sort of ankle line, like a pair of running socks. Exit stage left. Interestingly, not sure what bothered him there, but always interesting to watch the body language. Always gives us an indication of things that we miss with our inferior senses. Our mongoose has also moved on. Nice to see a little bit of water off to the right there, that sort of secondary channel that occasionally fills. I haven't seen water, well, I saw it there a couple of days ago, but we haven't had water in there for a while. Okay, well, seems all quiet at Old Donia now. Let's go back to the hide. Some impala have joined the baboons. A very often seen what we call commensalistic or sort of mutualistic really relationship between those species. Quite common to see impala feeding on the ground and baboons up in a tree, both benefiting from one another in terms of extra eyes and ears. The baboons dropping food that the impalas can hoover up. One of those well-known relationships in the bush, along with the dwarf mongoose and the yellow-billed hornbill, which is a personal favourite of mine. A bit of youthful exuberance on the left there. Nice to see them spread out over such a wide area. Lots of little interactions going on between them. I like this one, got a good idea. He's just found a nice little sort of, it's actually a shady spot, but a nice soft area of grass. He's just plonked himself down in there. Looks as if just taking a little bit of quiet time. MG leopard spots, going back to our Bushman discussion, you're saying the chief was making arrows by biting the wood with his teeth and then putting it in the fire. I imagine just to toughen it up a little bit. Yeah, amazing some of the skills that they have. Yeah, that's some afternoon entertainment, I suppose. I shall swiftly move on from that one to Karu, who's saying, how do birds navigate at night when they're flying? Do they use the stars for navigation? Well, yes, they do. We've got evidence that migratory species do use the stars, but they don't use individual stars per se. We don't think that their visual acuity is good enough to recognize a specific star in and amongst all the stars up there. But we do know, thanks to experiments that were done in a planetarium back in the 70s, that they are able to see the rotation of the night sky caused by the rotation of the Earth, of course. So the North Star and the South Celestial Pole those areas remain stationary in the sky, and the entire sky seems to rotate around those points. For us here in the southern hemisphere, it goes clockwise and anti-clockwise in the northern hemisphere. So we know that they can recognize that rotation, and that gives them a very basic orientation of north and south. But they will also use crap. They will also use a variety of other methods. They use smell. They use sound. They, in some species, can use the magnetic field lines of the Earth caused by the spinning outer core that creates the electromagnetic field that protects us from the radioactive particles being spewed off by the sun. So there are multiple ways in which excuse me laughing, but it's always a bit inappropriate and not quite sure what to say. Um, just life, I suppose. But there are many ways that the birds can use for navigation, certainly, and not just birds as well. Other animals have been shown to use the stars to navigate. I think many people are aware the dung beetles use the sun, the moon, and the light of the Milky Way, the light gradient caused by the Milky Way they can pick up. Seals, and we think whales as well, to some extent, can also potentially even identify specific individual stars. We've come back down to found to be a Cape wagtail. A few species of wagtail that I have not seen, due to the fact that they are quite rare or don't occur in this area. There's a citrine wagtail that I haven't seen, a grey wagtail, and a yellow wagtail, I believe, that I'm still searching for on my list. But they don't really occur in this area of South Africa. I'm just going to double check. So the citrine wagtail, wow, there seems to be just one record down on the south coast. Grey wagtail potentially could occur here, but is very rarely seen. And the yellow wagtail again could occur here, but I think very uncommon to see. But all characterized by that wagging tail. All right, well, we're almost out of time, but let's jet over to the other side of the continent. Let's head over to Safari Hook in Namibia. Oh, some beautiful waterbuck. Looks like mum and looks like a little one behind. Doing an excellent job of sheltering her young one. Come on, little one, pop your head out. Let's have a look at you. Nope, you can just see my muzzle. Oh, there's two. I wonder if they're twins. They look about the same age. I think it's very, very rare, but I wouldn't be surprised if it has been recorded. But they also do form sort of little creches. Sweet, man. They're like little goats. Interesting that at such a young age, that very obvious white circle is so prominent. You find in a lot of young animals that they don't develop their sort of final adult coloration until a various number of months, but pretty much from birth, the waterbuck come out with those little white circles, the follow me sign. Very, very cute. Well, unfortunately, everybody, that is all we've got time for. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you for your questions and for your comments. I hope you've enjoyed our discussions and the beautiful views we have been privy to today. And I look forward to catching up with you again very, very shortly. But I wish you all a lovely Tuesday further, and I hope we'll catch up again soon.